Good, whatever time of day it is that you're joining me here today on the Consequences of Communication podcast, episode 12, Building Relationships, Honeymoon Phase. My name is Tyler. I'm going to be your host. We are continuing with the honeymoon phase today and what to expect, like the wedding night, the honeymoon, and the readjustment period. Let's be real, not every phase in life lasts forever. Like the highs don't last forever, the lows don't last forever, the in-betweens don't last forever. They're moments, so you should enjoy life. Before we really get into it, I need to apologize. I'm recording this like 3 hours before I need to actually have this uploaded. So we're going to try to make as minimal as mistakes as possible as we go through this so I don't have to edit very much. And hopefully it's still good and all that. So I'm really hopeful about that because I'd hate to start getting in the habit of delaying these things. I've just been... The last couple of weeks have probably been the busiest of my life, schedule-wise, in a very, very long time. But I am striving to do better. Keep making those improvements. Identify what's wrong, and then correct what's wrong, and then not make those same mistakes again. And that's what I'm needing to do. That's part of this process. The question I have for you all: when you think of the honeymoon phase, what comes to mind? Are your expectations and your partner's expectations or your spouse's expectations aligned? Have you discussed this with your partner? So the honeymoon phase is really a phrase to describe the euphoric high that couples experience for the new level of relationship, but typically doesn't return after a brief period of time after the honeymoon. I said last episode that the wedding is for the ladies and the wedding night is for the guys. Both are required to have a legitimate marriage. Like, according to law, according to scripture, like whatever your belief system is. Otherwise, it's not a legitimate marriage. So after the planned exit from the wedding, whether that's like the announcement, like, hey, the bride and groom are leaving, everybody, say your farewells, whatever, they go on their way. Or if you guys just like ghost everybody and just leave. Like whatever that looks like for you, I suggest the former, not the ghosting part, but the you let everybody know that you're leaving, so they have a chance to say goodbye, and that they know that that's the end of the ceremony, and that's the end of the reception, so they can start packing up and saying goodbye to their friends or hang out with their friends there at the reception, whatever that looks like. You will most likely, or should, stay in a hotel and leave on your first trip as a married couple the next morning. So what that kind of looks like is you get married, then you have a reception, then you stay the night in a hotel, and then in the morning you leave to go on your honeymoon, wherever that's planned at. Or depending on when your wedding actually happens, you could actually leave that night. But, why rush that? So when you arrive in the hotel, you just put on your PJs and go to sleep. That's it. Like that is the wedding night. No, that's not what you do. You take your time to open the beautiful gifts before you and enjoy the moment of your new spouse. Because up to this point, you should have kept everything everything covered, or you didn't have sex beforehand, so you don't know what their body is really like. But now the anticipation, the build up to this moment is, it's pretty long. Hopefully it's something that both of y'all have looked forward to, but it's just a phenomenal moment to start to explore each other's bodies in the in the context of marriage. And that's a fantastic thing. Before you do this, going back to during the engagement period, when y'all are getting counseling or marriage counseling, you should have discussed what each other's expectations are. Maybe not with the counselor directly, but they should have posed the question and you two discuss it. Like, this is also kind of part of the DTR talk of if they've had any prior sexual experiences, and how many partners and whatnot should have been discussed then. But then as you're getting closer to your wedding, you should have discussed, like, I'm a virgin or whatever you think, and like what your expectations are, whether that's role play, turn offs, turn ons, those kind of things. Like what specifically turns you on, what specifically turns you off, so that way there's not really any of that discussion happening on your wedding night. You can just go in with the anticipation, hold each other in each other's arms, and explore each other's bodies as previously described, as opposed to like the extreme version of consent. Oh, is it okay if I touch your knee? Is it okay if I move my hand from your knee up on the outside of your thigh? Is it okay if I touch your shoulders? Is it okay if I kiss you? You know, like those things, like that's an extreme form. Like, I don't understand how anybody can find that romantic. Whereas if you discuss it before, you already know, like, oh, she doesn't like getting like touched in her sides right here because she's ticklish or something. She doesn't like being touched in the back of the knee. He doesn't like having his face touched while kissing. He doesn't like, these other things. You already have the consent for some things beforehand. When you are exploring each other's bodies, especially for the first time, be explicit with each other of what you like and you don't like from your spouse and to your spouse. So, for example, one of the things here is, hey, I liked getting lightly smacked, like a hand clap, like that, while being intimate. But if somebody says that and you're like, I'm not comfortable with that, then unfortunately, like that's where it is. Like, unfortunately for the person who likes it, unfortunately that's where it falls. Like, you just need to be okay with it. That's part of the consent talk mentioned before, and that's just an example. There's many others, but whatever you can think of, you should talk to them about it beforehand. Because if you're just like, hey, like in the heat of the moment, you're really passionate with each other, and then all of a sudden you just stop and be like, hey, what if next time I get a stormtrooper outfit or something for you to wear, or whatever it is, like some kind of off the wall, not in the moment. It can be talked about later, outside of the moment of y'all being intimate with each other, because that really ruins the moment. To put it in another way, you know how you're having a good conversation about if Batman could beat Captain America, and you're for Captain America and the other one's for Batman, but you guys are really enjoying the conversation, and then somebody comes in and is like, how about the weather at the Cowboys game last week? And abruptly changes the subject. Like, that throws off the pace of the conversation so much, because there's a lack of situational awareness. Something comes in completely out of left field that's not expected because of the flow of the conversation. It actually shifts it. And now it's like, well, now that we have this guy here who apparently likes the Cowboys and weather, we can't continue to talking about how Batman would beat Captain America if given prep time, and Captain America would beat Batman if given no prep time. But overall, it's a draw. Instead of having that conversation, you now have to change and be like, well, I don't really watch football, but I'm glad they had good weather during their game. Like it's such a disruptor in the flow. And I'm pretty sure you all have had something like that in a conversation. Just imagine how much more damage that would do during an intimate moment with your now spouse. Make sure if something is making you feel uncomfortable in the moment, you say it. For example, like if you bite their shoulder, but you bite it a little bit too hard, or like if somebody bites your shoulder, again, in the heat of the moment, and you're like, ow, that hurts. I don't like it when you do that. Then don't do that. Like, that's your responsibility of, oh, I want to maintain this moment. I don't want to be that disruptor of that. The last thing about the wedding night, this is also known as sexy time. Sorry, I usually say sexy time like that, but this is also known as sexy time, which is a good, enjoyable time within the context of marriage. In the morning, after you wake up, after y'all continue to have sexy time or whatever that looks like, and whatever your plans are, sometimes you need to plan a little bit out of it, or be like, hey, we need to be leaving out the door or checking out of this hotel by 9 and driving to the airport so we can catch our flight. Cool, whatever. Up until that point, up until y'all are getting ready, cool. Do whatever you would like to do and enjoy each other's company. Enjoy moments outside of the bedroom as much as in the bedroom. Yes, in the bedroom moments when you're intimate with each other is a new and exciting thing. And it's like, hey, I really like this. We should do more of this. but you also want to make sure that y'all are enjoying each other's company outside of the bedroom when you're like going to the airport, enjoying the time with each other, still enjoying being in each other's company during these times. Because a relationship, and I said this before, a relationship that's built on physicality or being physical with each other is a relationship that's doomed to fail, because you're not appreciating them as a person, and you're also not like really enjoying their company. You're not gaining the experience with them. It's better to also make sure that you're enjoying yourselves outside of the bedroom, like when you are going on dates, when you're spending time with each other, when you decided to just go for a walk and you found something really cool or had a really cool experience. Spend time going to local shops, eateries, museums, whatever it is that brought you to your destination, or like why you chose that destination. If you went to Sarasota, Florida, which has a couple of the top rated beaches in the world, then go enjoy the beaches. They're really cool. The sand is really fine. It's pretty soft. Definitely not rock-like. But then there's also some national parks that are relatively close by. But there's other things to do there. Like when I went there was a Mexican restaurant that was suggested by a binder at the Airbnb that I had. So my buddy and I, we went to that Mexican diner, that Mexican restaurant, and it was one of the best, the second best place that we ate that day, or they ate on that trip. The first one was a place called Sharky's on the Pier. That was fantastic. So if you live in the area, or if you're going there, then you should go to Sharky's on the Pier. It's like an hour and a half away, but totally worth it. Seafood nachos. Doesn't sound very good. Best nachos I've ever had in my life. I digress. But you go and enjoy those times together, and just, start living life as a couple. Enjoy each other's company. Eventually, the honeymoon phase comes to an end, and it's time to return home. Or the honeymoon comes to an end. Not necessarily the honeymoon phase. The honeymoon period ends. The trip ends. Which this also overlaps with the honeymoon phase ending and the readjustment period starting. So those kind of overlap. They have to overlap. This is probably the time period where y'all are going to have the most sex per period of time. Getting to know each other intimately is an enjoyable process that takes time and practice. You'll discover as y'all continue being intimate with each other about what you like, what you don't like, where you like being touched, where you don't like being touched, the sexual positions, dirty talk, if that's something that y'all enjoy. Just whatever to make that experience better each time, go for it. So the readjustment period is the time after the honeymoon when y'all are home and adjusting to life as a husband and wife. So that means y'all haven't lived together except for your honeymoon. Now you guys are at your place of residence, whether you moved in prior to the wedding or you're moving in now with each other, where the house is set up and each individual has a routine as an individual. Now you have to readjust your routines to be a husband and wife routine. Y'all need to be really patient with each other because of all of the different nuances in their routines that you may or may not like. For example, I brush my teeth and set it in the cup and, rinse my face off, pat it down, then then clean my ears with Q-tips and then comb my hair. Like that's kind of my process for that. For whatever reason, that process interferes in some way, or there's something that she doesn't like about that. Like, why aren't you flossing? Or why do you floss before you brush your teeth? Or why do you floss after you brush your teeth? Those little things are sometimes points of contention. But during the honeymoon period, your spouse can do no wrong. They could do no wrong. You're just really enjoying each other's company. There's that euphoric high. And you're just waiting, or you're really enjoying that period. But eventually there's going to be a period. You're like, hey, like, why? I don't like how you don't floss in that routine that you mentioned before. Like, and then, well, I don't like how you load the dishwasher. Folks, I don't know why I just said folks. Ladies and gentlemen, there is more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one ways to load the dishwasher. Like, are the dishes getting clean? Yes. okay, then what's the problem? There's a couple of easy ways to get around that is either one person only loads and unloads the dishwasher, like they do the dishes, they're on permanent dish duty, or whoever loads the dishwasher unloads it, or you guys just get over it. You come to the realization that the dishes are going to get clean regardless. Now, if you open up the dishwasher and you have bowls stacked too closely together and there's still some residue in there or like food residue from the last time, because you should be checking your dishes as you're picking them out of the dishwasher and putting them away, that's when you need to bring it up. Like, hey, these bowls were too close. Next time we need to put them a little bit further apart so they can actually get washed out correctly. So we just need to be paying attention to that. And every dishwasher is kind of different. Some are more powerful than the others, so it doesn't really matter, so on and so forth. But along with being patient with each other, you need to be understanding with each other. Understanding that it's going to take time for the routine to work itself out, for you to discuss what's going on with the routine, to ask questions to get to know them better of like why they don't floss in the morning, why they only floss at night, so on and so forth. With that, know your routine as a single individual will be different than different now that you have to share living spaces with somebody else. The time it takes for your thoughts to go from wow, they can do no wrong and are amazing, to wow, they really left their shirt on the floor again, or whatever the item is, or the honeymoon period is over at that point, because the nuances of their routine or their habits are starting to annoy you, irritate you, whatever. As soon as you recognize that that's a problem, so it doesn't become a bigger issue, you bottle your emotions in, eventually it's going to explode. Talk to them about it and be open and willing to listen to your spouse talk to you about things that they don't like, and make sure that you're listening and you try to correct the issue. So it's not the worst thing that you could do in that is, well, this is my house. Like as a guy, you're the leader of the house, but you also have a responsibility that hardly anybody talks about. Yeah, you're the leader of the house. You're supposed to direct the direction of your house. You're supposed to protect and provide for your family. And providing also is housing. Oh, look, we have this beautiful house, apartment, whatever. Like, hey, this is my house. I do what I want. I'll leave my shirts or I'll leave my clothing wherever I want. That is such a horrible way to have a relationship, because eventually you're going to destroy the character of your spouse or of your wife that you fell in love with. So instead of that, be like, oh, sorry, I left my shirt on the ground. It's just a habit. Please, like, I'm going to do my best to correct it, and start actively correcting it and showing that you're doing good or doing better, because you're not doing it because, or you're acting like my mom, get off my back. You're actually saying, okay, because my wife loves me, she brought to my attention something that she doesn't like. It's my responsibility to take what she said seriously. And because I love my wife, I'm going to do what she says. It's a love-respect kind of thing. Wives, respect your husband enough to actually tell them in a very loving way. Don't be like, why the bleep are you leaving your shirt on the bleeping floor again? Bleep. Nobody wants to be taught to like that. Especially in the confines of marriage. Like, no, in that relationship, nobody likes being talked like that. It's horrible. Because just like the husband, just a moment ago, like the husband killing the character of his wife, that kind of attitude and that kind of approach kills the character of your husband that you fell in love with, and the reason why you got married. And then another thing to know is, after the honeymoon period wears off, sexy time starts to slow down a bit after the honeymoon period. That's just how it is. Life gets in the way. There's varying degrees of how many times you should have sex in a week. That's definitely something that y'all need to talk about, probably after the honeymoon period, instead of like during the honeymoon period, because during the honeymoon period, it's like, wow, sex was amazing. All right, you good for like 4 times today? Like, no, like that's not a sustainable thing, because you're on vacation. That's the time to get to know each other intimately. But when you come home, you have jobs, you have work to do, you have your social lives to maintain, all of this stuff that kind of gets in the way of being able to have that all that time with each other. So it's also good to kind of make sure you talk to them like, hey, we have sex once a week and on average, and that's something that I don't like. I would like to increase the times that we have sex. Be open, honest, loving, straightforward, and clear with your communication with your spouse so that you have a foundation. So I heard this story earlier today, actually. Actually, it was, I think it was last night. I don't know. It was while I was at work. And I work overnights. This husband tells about a story about a lie that he said on his first date that he regrets saying it and not correcting it earlier. But on the first date, he accidentally put salt in his coffee instead of sugar and didn't want to. He wanted to impress his date, and because of that, like she inquired, like what? Hey, or she asked, why did you put salt in your coffee? Oh, I just like it. I grew up on the beach, and it reminds me of my time as a kid. So from that point on, whenever she made him coffee, she put salt in it, and she over the course of the marriage she got different kinds of salts and different things like that, and make him a nice salty cup of coffee in the morning. And he drank it with a smile and said, "Oh, this is the best cup of coffee you've made," or something along those lines. Really encouraging that. But they've been married for 57 years, and every morning he's had a very, very, very salty cup of coffee. But he doesn't want to correct it now because he's been married for 57 years. So he's at least 75 if he was married at 18 or older. That is like too far gone. Like again, be open, honest, clear. Be open, honest, loving, straightforward, and clear with your spouse of what you like and don't like, because that's the only way that you can not have those annoyances between each other build up to the point of where you're yelling at each other and damaging the relationship with each other. Like, you want to make sure that you're giving yourselves the best opportunity to succeed, because life is hard. Marriage is hard. Whether you're married, unmarried, single, together, have friends, don't have friends, have accountability partners, don't have accountability partners, life is just hard. But it's better if you have an optimistic attitude. And the way that you continue to encourage that optimistic attitude with your spouse is arguing, yelling, and telling them everything that they're doing wrong all the time, every day. Right? Wrong. That is the wrong thing to do. That's how you get a pessimist and somebody that hates you, and that's how you sow seeds of hate and end up destroying your lives. You want to make sure that you're complimenting, you're admiring, you're respecting, you're loving each other in marriage so that you can continue to have a great life and enjoy life. I would hate to be 20 years from now knowing that right now is the best time of my life for the next couple years until I find a wife and get married and start having kids. And then after that, from when I meet my wife or until my wife and I, or future wife, get married onwards, if that is just complete trash, like for the next 18, 20 years, like that is horrible. Like, nobody wants to invest that time. Have you ever had like a bad week? Why would you want the bad week to continue? You want to make sure that you repair that relationship. So talking could become a chore. However, effective communication, or effectively communicating what you are dissatisfied with in any area of life with your spouse, is so important to maintain a healthy relationship. Talking can become a chore. However, effectively communicating what you are dissatisfied with in an area of life with your spouse is so important to maintain a healthy relationship. For the first time on this podcast, we come to my life philosophy. And I've said it a couple times already. I honestly thought I said it last time, but I come to it this time. Open, honest, loving, straightforward, clear communication is a key to every successful relationship, not just romantic relationships. And here we are using it in a romantic sense, or like in a romantic relationship way. And the breakdown is as follows. And this breakdown is regardless of what context you're using it in. Open, the willingness to use more than just short responses. So, yes, sure, whatever, I don't care, I don't know, go away, mm-mm, like those responses are all short responses. So you need to have more of an explanation of a response, or be willing to communicate and go back and forth. One of the first things that I did on this podcast, I can't remember exactly what episode, I think it was 2, where it might have been 3, where you're talking like, hey, this is my problem. And then you respond, I'm hearing that your problem is this. Is this correct? Yes, that is correct. That is my problem. You have a clear grasp. Or no, that's not my problem. My problem is more like this, and explain it in a different way. And then that's how you identify the problem. That's how you should communicate. And the only time that you should have short answers is if, like, hey, am I understanding that correctly? Am I not understanding that correctly? Like that situation. Honest. You are willing to tell the whole truth of what you think and feel. Not just the partial truth. Like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you going out on guys' night. I'm okay with you going to the club. No, I'm not okay with that. Be honest about it. Because you don't want, like, everybody's been lied to. Nobody likes being lied to. Like, it's not a good habit to get into. In that, you also want to make sure that you're loving, or the next one is loving. You are using words that are not directing blame to who you are speaking to, providing a gentle or tactful approach to how you are saying things. Like, I'll give you an example of this. One of my friends that I had in the past, I had to be very, 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 very tactful. Any sign of like aggressive words or aggressive action or tones towards this individual would really upset him. And he would just like shut down and stop communicating. So I had to be very, very, very tactful when talking with him. My other friend, he's actually my best friend. I could talk to him however I want to, but that's because him and I have that relationship. But there's also that escalation. Like, hey, bro, I think you're doing something wrong. This is why it's wrong. And this is where I want to make sure that you're succeeding in life. And it's like, yeah, oh yeah, I totally accept that. I could think about it. But if they continue to do that, then it's when words get harsh. But between us and just the dynamic of that relationship, it's a form of love for my best friend. And it's the same way with him to me. Like, he can talk to me like that. He has that permission. He has a seat at my table to be able to do that. Straightforward is the next one. You're not dropping hints. You're not beating around the bush. You're not getting to the point, or you are getting to the point and saying what you want. I know the majority of people are different, and but the stereotype is that like men don't pick up on the hints of women. So this is more towards the women's side. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, beating around the bush of doing stuff, but I've been working on this for years. These words that I put in this are almost a 20-year in progress statement. And it's evolving. Like, it's evolved several times. As I find something new or something that makes more sense, I'm going to put that in here. But right now, this is where it stands. And being straightforward is example. My mom, like, we'd be driving in the car, and my mom would be like, hey, look, there's Golden Arches, or there's a McDonald's, because she loves that Diet Coke there. And my dad's like, yeah, there is a McDonald's there. And it took years for my mom to, as she says, train my dad to like, hey, there's a McDonald's. In parentheses, I want to stop because I want a Diet Coke at McDonald's or from McDonald's. Like, how, and that caused arguments, I'm sure. I don't remember them actually having arguments with that, but I'm almost positive that it did. Instead of and they could have avoided all of those arguments if my mom was like, hey, there's a McDonald's, can we stop for a Diet Coke? That would be an example of being straightforward. Clear. The words and tone you are using are conveying your intentions correctly. You want to make sure that the words that you're using are conveying, or you want to make sure that the words and the tone you are using are conveying your intentions correctly. And you need to also be patient during this process of communicating, because I know for me, one of the things that I really, really struggled with, like 10 years ago, is I used to just say stuff, but the way I would say things would be confusing to some people. Not saying that they're like, I didn't look at them as being idiots, and that wasn't my intention of like, oh, you're idiots, you should know this is super simple. No, my intention was, oh, like after I realized this was, oh, I'm not saying my intentions correctly, let me work on this. And I started to, whenever I would say something, I would say whatever I would want to say and then ask the question, does that make sense? And at the start of it, I also realized like how I said, does that make sense? Gave the tone I was using was more of, I think you're an idiot. That's how it came across. So I noticed that, but it was hard for me to get out of that habit of my speaking habit of, does that make sense? Saying it like that is the negative, but saying, hey, does that make sense? Is like, hey, I really want to know what, like, if that makes sense, if I explain something incorrectly. So when I was moving in that transition, I would say, hey, does that make sense? I don't mean that in like a negative kind of way. I just know that I have a problem with speaking correctly or speaking in a way that people understand. And explaining something like that is like, hey, no, this is not like, I'm taking the blame for this because I don't know how to talk. And it's worked out really well. A lot of avoided misunderstandings with that. So doing these things is going to make life so much easier during the inevitable disagreements y'all have. Having open, honest, loving, straightforward, clear communication. It is the key to your successful relationship. And again, it's not just romantic. It's in all aspects of relationships. A question. And let me know down in the comments or in a review, and I'll get back to you on this, because I want to make sure that I'm putting out stuff that y'all listen to and are at least thought-provoking, because nobody has my same perspective. I want to gain the perspective of other people. So I would appreciate it if you would do me that favor. The question that I have is, how has your view of the honeymoon changed after listening to this episode? Homework. Think about how to continue to hold your spouse in high regard. If you don't have a spouse yet, think of your future or ideal spouse and ways to hold them in high regard and keep holding them in high regard. Because as soon as we lose sight of that they're a valuable, precious person that's in my life, and I love them at one point to marry them, as soon as we lose sight of that, you start treating the relationship like garbage. A big problem for guys, or a stereotype for guys, is, and I'm guilty of this too, to some extent. I'm not sure exactly to what extent, because I don't have that perception on the other side, or that perspective on the other side, in its entirety. But like, hey, okay, cool, got married, check that box off, don't have to worry about that anymore, on to the next thing I want to accomplish. Like, or like, hey, I have a relationship, I'm just going to frame this relationship and stick it on the wall, and that's my relationship. Don't have to touch it, don't have to maintain it. And that is a horrible, horrible way to go. If today's episode of Consequences of Communication has helped you in some way, or somebody came across in your mind while listening to this, please share it with them. And if you really enjoyed this or you didn't enjoy it, please let me know in a comment section or in a review. And I would really appreciate it if you liked or subscribed to this to get more content in communicating, or the consequences of communication. So the next episode that we have, oh my gosh, thank Thank you so much for tuning in today. I do appreciate it, taking time out of your busy day to listen to this podcast. Hopefully, you have a little bit of grace with me on this one, and I'm going to do a little bit better in the future. Try to be better 1% each day than you were the previous day. And over the course of a year, you change like 37 times, or you improve like 3,700%, which is ridiculous if you think about it. So just a small change every day to improve has drastic compounding effects. So join us for the next episode, March 19th, 2024, which is in 2 weeks, for Consequences of Communication, episode 13, Building Relationships Down the Road. I'll talk to you on the next episode, and until then, take care and enjoy life.